Whoa! Boom! Personality turns on right now. All right. Welcome back to another episode of Ketchup with Domtomato. It's good to be back. This is episode 11, so we're nearing the final few. This week, we've got a very special guest. He's a PK coach at Oslo Movement. He's a organizer for a crazy event, OMG, and actually a beast of an athlete. He's originally from the UK. Now he's in Oslo, Norway. Ansel Darell, how are you, mate?
Hey, doing great, man. Yeah, stoked to be on the podcast.
You're very welcome. Yeah, this season we've been talking about kind of creating industry from your passion, and also just talking about the different types of events and competitions that we hold within the sport and people's opinions on them, and also just ways to kind of innovate and ways that we can kind of further those avenues. So I just wanted to start with a really simple question: is what is your name backwards?
My name backwards, Lesnar.
Lesnar. So to be full name would be Larrard,
Oh,
Larrard Lesnar.
Larard Lesnar.
Well,
Yeah.
that's actually a superhero name, Larrard Lesnar. That's pretty good. And if you could have a superpower, actually, what would that superpower be to go with your superhero name?
Oof. Immortal knees, mate.
Immortal knees, just knees of pure iron. Yeah, no, that is. So do you have like pre-existing knee stuff that's going on with you for your training currently, or is that inspired by real life
Yeah.
events?
I had like, oof, probably, I'm guessing somewhere in the realm of 10 years training without ever having a single knee problem or anything. Not a
Hmm.
twinge.
Got lucky.
And then, yeah. And honestly, it was a combination of starting our gym and coaching like almost every evening while working full time as a chef. Just,
Just yeah, being on your
yeah,
feet and moving around the kitchen and like it's like those small minute things where you don't actually get to fully exercise that like weighing on your body so much. I
yeah,
remember, yeah.
exactly.
Did
But yeah,
how long were you working as a chef for?
um, oof, like 5 years, 6 years,
Oh, it's like a
a bit more
decent
maybe.
decent block of time. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that like pretty much every evening?
yeah. It was well. I was predominantly while we were starting the gym, I was working mornings mostly. So I used to
Okay.
start at like 7, finish at 3, and then head on over to the gym and coach in the evening.
Damn, yeah. I mean, that's a huge part of like the what we've been talking about with some of the guests is like you do need to kind of create a supplementary stable income that's more like a real life situation while you build that focus and dream of getting the parkour stuff off the ground. Because not only do we have a small industry, but with any sort of like startup business or like venture that you're going to take, I think having a base to work with is good. So did you like was chef like always your go-to, or was there other employments before that that like led like little things you did before?
um, I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, to be honest, mate. I've been pretty
Mm-hmm.
much here, there, and everywhere, and done everything. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I
Any
yeah,
standouts?
my education was in eco building, environmental architecture, and
Oh, okay.
such. Yeah, so I
Nice.
did
Yeah,
that in
yeah.
California back in 2011. Yeah, because I was there for
Damn.
the Tempest opening jam. Um,
Jeez. That's old school.
yeah.
That's
Um,
a really, yeah, yeah. And so did you do any work like specifically with that degree, or is that more just based on like another experience that you had? Like it was another kind of grab of things.
yeah, so the thing I studied out there, I kind of used it, but I went on to study further techniques and such, and then worked a bit around Europe um, for a few years, couple of years
Mm-hmm.
doing that, and then kind of moved away from that and stepped off into more of like a sporting world. Worked a
Yeah.
bit with like outdoor activity instructing, being like a climbing instructor and a kayak instructor and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow, yeah, versed in all the different like aqua sports, land sports. Yeah, that's cool,
Yeah.
man. If you could show yourself, like even if it wasn't like a jump or a clip, but an achievement or something that you've done with your parkour career so far to yourself before you started parkour to give you like motivation or an idea of where to go with it, what would you show yourself?
Ooh, that's an interesting question.
Mm.
before
You
I
take a
started
second.
with parkour. Yeah. Um, it's so hard to say.
It's like
Like,
mid kayak, you give yourself like a vision.
yeah. Um, I think it's more the feeling, you know, like I would want to know how it felt to do some of the movements we do. Like,
Hmm.
you know, it's just over this Christmas actually, went to this awesome beach in Wales, near to where my parents live. And there is like a seawall there that just progressively goes from like 30 centimeters all the way up to probably around 8 meters high to down to sand.
Yeah, wow.
Um, and as you yourself know very well, like huge front flips are just one of the most fun things.
Yeah, they're a good time.
Like
There's nothing like the
that
airtime
kind
that
of
you get.
feeling. Yeah, that kind of feeling, man. Well, I was doing that this weekend, like last weekend, and just that, yeah, that feeling of like the freedom.
Yeah, the ability to kind of send yourself with full momentum and full comfort. Essentially like diving into flight, but then being able to recover the landing. I think there's a sense of control in the chaos of that situation that is really gratifying. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you would somewhat give yourself that sensation or that feeling to that you would chase after that to attain. Like, so that's something that then your younger self could go, okay, that's the sensation I want out of this, or the sensation I'm motivated by.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
That feeling of being in control. It's that moment where you're like in the air and you're perfectly calm.
Hmm. Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like 4 meters up in the air, upside down, and you're not scared. You're not stressed. You're just
I
relaxed. And
definitely label it as flow state in a more broader sense. But yeah, you totally understand. That's a interesting answer because a lot of people have been like a specific move or a jump that's like that pinnacle, but to hear it's more of a unique sense of self that you want to chase is really cool. So looking back on this year for yourself, how do you think your 2022 was as a total?
wow, it's actually been a really crazy one for me.
Mm-hmm.
We've hosted more events this year than we've ever done before.
Is
Ending
that
up
just from the
hosting.
gym or is that the Oslo Movement Gathering? Like, are they separate or is Oslo Movement and Oslo Movement Gathering conglomerate in that way?
They are one business. It's the same. There's four of us who work with the business.
Yeah.
It's the same four guys doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, but so through the gym this year, we've actually hosted two women's jams. We've hosted a purely trekking event, a purely parkour event, and in October the big joint parkour trekking event, OMG.
Yeah. Yeah, the classic. That yeah, so that when you're running these events, is that like a big personal tax on your time and effort, or is it something you kind of delegate more and have a bit more like streamlined of a process with?
Um, so it would be unfair to not give credit here to Eric, who is
Mm-hmm.
one of the guys who I work with, because he does a phenomenal amount of the behind the scenes organization of these events.
Yeah, so
He is
logistical.
amazing on that front.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that's just really cool to hear is that because a lot of people who would be wanting to work in these things may think that they have to take on all these things themselves, but you'll probably be able to advocate for your team having different abilities in different roles that really come together in a nice way. So, Eric, you said is doing a lot of logistics. Is there something that you find yourself taking on more prominently and more predominantly?
Well, I don't know if you know this, but of the four of us in my business, I'm actually the only parkour guy. The other three are trickers.
Ah, no, I did not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to these events, I kind of end up, I mean, I'm responsible for designing the courses, the setups, running all the competitions, coming up with the challenges for that,
Mm-hmm.
choosing athletes on the parkour side of things who we
Uh-huh.
want to bring over, and yeah, all of that. So like everything that is directly parkour related is my job basically.
Yeah, you've got program advisement or like parkour director role in that title because that's where you sit in the group. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so that means
Mm,
that yeah, all of the contact that the parkour community would have predominantly comes through you and like comes through your channels. That's
yeah.
cool. Did you have a favorite event that you threw? Was one of them really stand out to you as something that maybe was just super fun, or like maybe something that was super successful in the entrepreneurial front, or was there anything that one of those events that stood out to you?
Mm, it's also an interesting question. Like, so this year, as I said, we've hosted more events than ever, and each one has been incredibly different. Um,
Hmm.
and that has been a lot of fun experimenting with. This most recent OMG, the mixed one,
Yeah.
honestly, I was a little bit terrified going into it because I got a bit carried away and I built a little bit of a mad setup. I'm not going to lie, looking back.
Yeah.
Like, it was
Just all
six
out.
meters high. Like, went up to 6 meters high.
Damn.
I mean, I put it into the corner of like a big hole so that you couldn't inherently fall off the 6 meter points all the way down,
Yeah.
but there was still like gaps and stuff. And when we finished constructing it, I was stood on top and I was like, oh my god, this is terrifying. What the hell have I done?
The amount of people that are going to be coming up here with not this much experience at height is, yeah. But I
Yeah,
think it's nice to have that set up in a gym where you can safely go up to that height and feel what that looks like, because a lot of people who don't train like that outside won't get to experience that height, or they're not going to go up onto a ledge that high in an outdoor setting because it's just uncomfortable. So setting
yeah.
that up is probably beneficial in the long run for a lot of practitioners.
And we actually had like no injuries relating to any of that. There was a couple of people who had like some bad landings just doing, normal stuff, but like
I
we
think
had
that's
nobody
a,
falling off the setup or anything because you
yeah.
inherently get that feeling. I mean, as well as anyone, once you're up there, you gain respect for the scenario you're in.
Mm-hmm. There's no
It's
faking it. There's no like posturing your way through the bravado or the bravery. It's very like confronting and very real when it comes to that
yeah.
height sort of thing.
Mm.
Was there then if everything, if each jam had like a standout thing, could you name like a standout, like a reason that you felt like it worked, or a reason that you felt like everyone like came out of it having a good time, even if it's just like some of the jams, anything special that stands out?
Um, I mean, I think always the important thing with any of these jams is really how people get to interact with each other.
Hmm.
Like you can build the craziest setups and you can, all of that, but if people aren't kind of given that space to actually train together and have fun inherently, that's what they're there for.
Yeah, yeah. It's
So the
that
most important
collaboration of
thing,
ideas.
exactly, the
Yeah,
most
okay.
important thing is like enabling that social space.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I also think that we've managed to come to a really good place with how we're doing competitions because I feel like they managed to feel quite open to everyone to try and play with,
Accessible.
and yeah, very accessible for everyone
Hmm.
to like take part in. It doesn't feel too serious, but at the same time gives a really fun, challenging final to those
Yeah, so
people
there
who
still
get
is that
through.
advancement of level and that still like push and quality of movement that you go aspiring for, but kind of, I'm just trying to frame it for the audience here, is putting it like giving yourself like an attainable entry level where everyone can participate, and then the stacking gets harder and harder as you get to that elite level, so that nobody feels like they're excluded from the get-go, or it's like only a competition for the best of the best, the Ed Scotts and the Travis Berkeys.
Yeah,
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 that's cool.
exactly. That's very
So
much my goal.
yeah, when you're running these comps, do you have like a specific, like you have speed, style, and skill, and they're always kind of the same regimented format, or are you doing kind of independent challenge events? What's the way you play that?
That's yeah, also one that's not I haven't conformed to anything yet.
Okay, cool.
Sometimes we tend to run the classic skill comp, or at least something along the lines of that. But
So what would that look like as far as like a breakdown?
um, so let's say normally, depending on how many people participate, we
Hmm.
have 2 to 3 rounds, and it's challenge based. Yes or no? Did you stick it? Didn't you? Did you complete it? Didn't you?
Tick the box. Yeah.
Very easy to judge. Yeah, yeah. And normally the first round, as I said, because we want it to be really accessible for everybody, the first round is just really technical, small movements,
Hmm.
just awkward challenges, weird things that people maybe haven't tried, a bit of climbing elements, and mix it
Yeah,
all up a
mix.
bit.
Cool.
And then a second round, I tend to focus on similar style of challenges, but adding in some power. So you need to be confident and comfortable with the
bit of
techniques.
airtime, so a bit of like
Yeah,
bit of power into the movements and a bit of airtime between them, where it might feel more awkward to come into those landings. You have to catch that force a bit. Okay, I see.
exactly. And
Yeah,
my
yeah,
my kind of thought process with that is that it's like that's the test that tells me that people in the finals are safe to actually try some messed up shit.
yeah. Okay, because they've been going for you're working from a base of technicality and then adding the power and risk along the way, as opposed to starting with something maybe more powerful and then creating that diversity. You're seeing they are proficient and safe, and then they can try this. Yeah, that makes sense. That's really cool.
Exactly. It's like the first round isn't ever like none of it's very hard. I solidly believe that a beginner could go and probably complete every challenge in my first rounds,
Mm-hmm.
but not with the attempts given and the time given.
Okay,
You
so that's
have
where
to
the
be a pretty
stipulations.
proficient athlete. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that kind of gives it that one, competition dynamic, but two, it gives it some guidelines and framework, so everyone can still have a chance, but then it's not just like an open field. You don't get like 50 people qualifying through the first round who've never tried parkour before. Yeah.
exactly.
Is there any other formats that you play with during these events? Like, is there anything you've created, or like, or is it more like when you do style comps, how are those judged? Those sorts of things.
Yeah. So I actually keep on playing around with these things, much to the dismay of most people taking part in the finals, I think.
I'm
um,
coming for some consistent judging.
I don't know if you wait, were you there for our one 2021 October? I feel like maybe you weren't.
No, I didn't. I didn't
Um,
make it across. 2021 was less. I couldn't get to as many destinations because of COVID.
yeah, yeah, no, I was just thinking of it because, like, for instance, that year I actually mixed the whole two of those concepts together and made all of my finalists compete in a way where they got to actually prep the final skill challenges, which is pretty unorthodox,
Yeah.
but they were really hard ones, so that you needed to prep them. And then they
Hmm.
had to try and choose which ones they felt like they would be able to do and put them into a style line.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so they've got
So
to
the
complete the skills, but also make it coherent with the like a creative piece as far as using the space.
exactly. And the idea was that there were five challenges and then five categories for judging on style, which meant that you could get the same amount of points for just doing all of the challenges or a good style line. So like
Hmm.
both
You
aspects
could
were
buff.
equally worthwhile.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so
Mm.
was there with because that's like a skill challenge with the style line, were they required to do flips, or was that choice based on like they could do like a purely parkour line as long as they use the space?
Yeah, that was totally up to them. They
Like,
were getting judged on like difficulty, execution, like the kind of classic style
yeah.
categories.
Hmm.
So obviously, throwing in a back dub full somewhere in your line is obviously going to be higher points than just conging over a wall.
Yeah.
Um, but it was
Spe-
totally up to them.
True, true. Speaking of that, like older classic judging system, we have flow, execution, difficulty, and creativity. And I feel like creativity is the hardest one to quantify. If there was a way, like in my mind, it would be like spot usage as opposed to creativity, or like location, like utilization. And I guess
Mm.
how if you could specify creativity more for a competition format, where would you like to see that route go?
Mm. That's a really interesting one. Yeah, because that's something. I mean, I feel like quite often like a I don't know, an old school grumpy athlete when I end up talking about these things because I watch the big comps and even the Red Bull out emotions and everything. And I feel like there is now a style or a few styles that everyone is trying to replicate because so and
Yeah.
so did well with it last year. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
For
But
sure.
then
That's something
it's not their style and it doesn't work well for them. It doesn't look good when they do it because that's
that
not how they should move.
and that's not how the sport inherently is with its individualism. It doesn't think it, like from my experience with parkour free running, you don't have one style that people adhere to. It's that people find their individual style and move in their individual way, and that's what makes that so special and so individual and so personal, is like not being like everybody else.
exactly. Like when you look at the people who have really stood out in like let's say Red Bull Out of Motion, people like Pasha, people like Diddy, people like Josh Malone,
Yeah.
people who everyone was like, "Whoa, what is this?" That's because it was super different to what everyone was doing that year.
Yeah, they made a mark through that way. Even like Pedro Segaldo and Jesse Pereville, when I was like competing very early, and they were just doing like a line with one side flip and inherently like sick jumps, just filled with
Exactly.
gangster parkour. And that was because it was different and high level, it was standing out. But yeah, I think
Precisely. And I feel like that is what you want to see from an event is I don't want to see somebody throwing down the hardest line they can with 10 dub fulls in it.
mm-hmm.
I want to see somebody moving in a way that looks like they're enjoying it. And
And
it
it's
looks like
interesting
it's
and thought out. Yeah, it's come from
exactly.
a real place. I do agree with you in the sense that over like the years, especially since I started competing 2014 to particularly like 2020 and 2021, there was a very clear like competition style that was happening, evidently more in Red Bull Out of Motion than most, but also like through the FIG comps and the other like most of the just the independent small comps you would see would start to lean. I guess the best example is someone like Archie or someone like Christian Kolowensky, where it's a very flow-based, trick-heavy style, and like really focus on like that spot utilization to rack up points and that sort of thing. Those are two like
Mm-hmm.
examples I can use of people who very much were the catalysts of that style becoming prevalent. But that's what this year's Art of Motion really tried to change with for the Red Bull comp. They did have that 3 day split up, and it was very much something like I spoke to the organizers prior to the event when they were thinking about changing it. And that was one of the things we all recognized is that there was becoming like a point system hacking ability where people would move this way to fulfill these points. And we didn't want that as the image for the sport either. And I think that's why like trying to figure out different ways for the judging systems to take place so that we can still have that like here's your line, here's your like 20-second piece, or like you get 3 goes at a line like combo. That can still happen, but we have a more nuanced judging version that isn't just creativity as a broad blanket. It's such a like that's so subjective as a word. We want something maybe more specified, like innovation or spot utilization, like something like that, which I think might sit more into the realm.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows?
Another thing though, like another point on that, I was at Ollerup this year for the RIP Ollerup Jam.
Mm-hmm.
And we had like a talk and a discussion about that. And one thing I pointed out there, which is I don't know, maybe an unpopular opinion, but like from my perspective, it doesn't really matter that it's judged subjectively
Yeah,
because like all style is a subjective thing. It's going to be
right.
judged subjectively.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you don't like how that set of judges it, go to a different competition. Like
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
because actually that is just at the end of the day, those are the people judging you,
Yeah.
and
Those are the ones
they're
who are
going to
in
judge
that
you their
position.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think those call outs of like nepotism and friend employment was like a very shallow call, because at the end of the day, anyone who's been put in that judging position does really treat themselves as a professional, like an impartial. Like anytime I've judged, doesn't matter if my friends are competing or some random person, like everyone gets the same merit. That's how like you are when you're a judge. And I think it's very difficult to think that there would be any sort of sway in these like judging ranks. But I really like that you have a solid stance on that, which is yeah, like there's multiple events and each thing's going to be judged differently by different people. So if you don't like it, do a different competition, make a different competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice, and I think a lot of the street events and stuff like that that we're seeing pop up have that almost independent freedom to them. We're like, okay, we might not have the makings to make something like OMG or something of that size yet, but if we start with an independent system and it's just purely judged on like yeah, like even the Star Awards where it's judged on peer advocacy, it's like oh, okay, we think it's cool because we think it's cool, and there's less constringencies in that way. It helps broaden the spectrum, but also award a lot of different athletes for a lot of different things.
exactly. It's the
Hmm.
same like when we had the Kipper Jam in Sweden this year in Stockholm.
Yeah,
I thought they did it really well. They didn't give any reasoning for it. They didn't give like there was no like, oh, because this then this and they did this
yeah,
bolt
yeah.
into this combo. They at the end of the day they were just like, yo, that dude, that was sick.
He won.
Here's
Yeah,
a
we liked
t-shirt.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like there was no
And that's
like
very
nothing to
subjective.
debate, you know? Yeah,
Yeah,
there's nothing to debate about it. You can't be like, oh well, I think that person should have won because they did so and so, which should have been more points. Like it's just tough luck.
yeah.
Like
The judges have said this, and they are the judges. So yeah, it's almost like complete subjectivity then, as opposed to having like even the creative subjectivity per judge per
yeah.
system. So yeah, it's interesting like that.
But
Um,
I kind of like that for our sport because I think it stops what you were talking about, where people are like changing their movement to try and get points.
yeah,
Because if it's purely subjective, you don't know what that person necessarily is looking
you've
for,
just
and
got
you
to do the
cannot
best you can do.
exactly. You just got to
Yeah,
send what you like to do and hope that that's it. And if it isn't,
hope it resonates.
cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
next, yeah.
It's a very interesting point. When you run your events and stuff, have you worked with management in the past? Have you like worked with like an event firm or anything like that, or will you always run it independently?
Um, we we've completely run it independently.
Hmm.
And I'm not gonna lie, the first few years was a bit hectic. Like,
Learning any new system is going to be just chaotic. That's why I was curious if you like hired professionals early or anything like that, or just run it.
nah, honestly, mate, like, I feel like our first event, it was one of those things where you're sat around with your mates and you're like having a drink and you're like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did that? And then you overcommit and then you're like, well, now we've got to do it.
Like I've sent all these messages out, man. Like you got to, yeah, yeah, crazy. And
Exactly. I
so,
mean, 2018 was our first one and we got you to show up.
hmm, yeah, yeah.
And then yeah, and we had a bunch of other athletes, and we basically just sent all these messages out. And we were like, "Hey, do you want to come to our event?" And people were like,
Yes.
"Yeah, sick." And then we were like, "Cool. Well, now we have to make an event because these people are coming for one."
Yeah, nice. That's great. That's exactly what I think is like great for the audience to hear and people that are listening is like sometimes you do just need to fly by the seat of your pants, get the ball rolling, but and then the pieces will fall into place. Like you will, if you have shit to do, you'll probably do it.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Were you guys running the gym prior and running a business prior to the events, or did that kind of all like happen pretty like what's the word together coherently, no, just symbiotically. One of
Mm,
them.
so before the first OMG in 2018, we'd been running the business for 2 years, but not we didn't have our own gym. We were teaching in a gymnastics hall.
Okay.
Um, and we got up to the point where we had, I think we were on like 260 members or something.
Oh wow.
Um, and as a result,
It's not a
we were
small
renting
amount.
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But we just had like Sundays in this gymnastics hall, and we were
Hmm.
paying an absurd amount, like €1,000 for the Sunday.
Wow.
And yeah,
Exorbitant.
and we were just doing like, I think, I don't even remember how many hours now, like 8, 9 hours straight with a 15-minute break or something of classes
Jeez,
because
yeah, yeah. Just
we couldn't
flat
afford to rent
strap.
it more days.
No, no.
Yeah,
Just feel like wake up and just Sunday teach and then go to bed and then have to start Monday.
exactly. It felt like that. So that was kind of how we were doing things. And then at some point, we got to the point where like we had enough people and we were making money and we had this money and we were like, well, what should we do with this money? And that's when it was like, cool. Well, it would be cool to open a gym and it would be cool to run an event. So let's do it.
Yeah, sick. So those kind of happened synchronized, yeah, together
Yeah,
synchronously.
actually, the space we have for our gym, we actually got through the connection from renting the hall that we rented for the event.
Ah, okay. So it was yeah, that
Yeah.
contact and stuff. Well, yeah, did you find that when you were running the event and starting the business that your local community and your local like council and like is Norway kind of helpful in that space for providing like services, funding or anything like that? Or was it more a case of like using social media and business and tools and that? Was there any like collaboration?
Um, I would say that I think there is a lot more funding out. I think there's a lot of funding out there in Norway, and we have not used any of it.
Okay, yeah,
We
yeah.
probably should do. I think it's our biggest weak point is that none of us specialize in that. None of us really have the know-how, maybe. It's something that we're all like, yeah, we should look into and do more of that.
Yeah,
But actually, we're managing just fine without, and it's kind of empowering to feel like
you can do it
we're
with your
completely
own.
self-sustaining.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, because I think it is one of those things where the more you can activate like those contacts and networks, you can, I think, have more reach in your local area, like creating parks and independent things that aren't necessarily just around the gym, but it's also something that, yeah, again, you need the tools and contacts to have and an idea for. Otherwise, just like you said, it's going to be, two or three times of trying stuff that might not work first. And I think when you're going for a bigger, uh, once you're dealing with governments, councils, all those sorts of things, it's a wider world, which is you want to be a bit more organized and have the know-how going in. Is there any good advice that you were given over the time of building the gym or learning about like business that's really stood out to you? Or even
Um,
something that's happened to you that's kind of you could be given good advice to give back to other people?
hmm. Um, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like we've had so many years of like just constantly learning. Everything's been like, oh, okay, that,
Hmm.
like I think we did pretty all right, but obviously we got a lot wrong. Um, and yeah, I don't know.
But going back, would you try not to do those wrongs, or do you see those wrongs as necessary things to learn, like the path and to kind of make sure that you knew what you were doing?
the majority of them, yeah, I think the majority of everything we did wrong kind of helped us learn how to do it right. I don't think we
Without
would have
shooting yourself in the foot, kind of thing along the way.
exactly, and
Yeah.
I don't think we did anything seriously wrong. Like we've always had safe classes. I've always been I mean, maybe I train a bit more on the kind of careful side than some people.
Hmm.
I'm not a very reckless athlete.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
More
know
risk
what I can
averse
do,
as a
but
person.
yeah. So I know what I can do, and I'm comfy in what I can do, but I don't tend to push students very hard. I let students show me that they want to push themselves,
Hmm.
and then I'm there to like help them and help them progress. But I'm not gonna like have beginners and be like, oh, you need to do this now, or like you should be doing this already, or like.
Like traditional gym coach or like personal trainer, like that stereotypical like overbearing in your face motivation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I just
nothing
think
like
that
that.
what we do is inherently dangerous if you do it wrong. We all understand that.
Yeah.
Like, so it's important to focus on technique and have a good understanding of why we learn to roll, why we learn to bounce, and like all of these things
Hmm.
before you start doing it on a big scale. Because you
Yeah.
need to like have that stuff pretty solid.
Yeah, and like you said as well, like it isn't something where like the dangers aren't like it's such a personal thing when it comes to your fear level and your boundaries that if you're to just push everyone through the same kind of blender of this challenge and this mental capacity, then you are going to see more injuries and more dangers with the sport. So yeah, it's a very much a case of I think like as you said, breaking them down into digestible parts and something that each person can like attain at a safe level and have the nuanced understanding of the complexity before they take them to these extremes.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing I feel like I've realized as a coach, which took me I for sure longer than I'd like to admit to realize, um, is that the majority of people who come to parkour classes are not there to become professional parkour athletes. Like,
No, that's
like
yeah, that's not the
because
MO.
no, like when we started training, it's so long ago that like there weren't parkour gyms and classes.
There
Anyone who
wasn't
started training
pros
parkour
really.
was because we were like, we just want to get as good as we can.
Yeah, yeah. It
But
wasn't
now
about
I have a lot of
accessibility.
people. No, exactly. I have a lot of people who they're just like, I just want to have fun. I don't want to push myself. I don't want to come there and learn how to do these crazy hard moves. I don't
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to
Jump
do
between
scary
rooftops.
stuff. No, they never want to do anything scary, and that's fine. Like I have I have a pensioners class.
Yeah,
None
yeah.
of them,
So
yeah, like none of them are there because they want to learn to front flip off a roof. They're there because they just want to move and have fun.
and that's really what I think a lot of the mainstream public does kind of misunderstand about parkour is it's fundamentally about the utilization of your body and its like functionality as opposed to like the cool shit you see online. That's just the extremes of it. Like, like any professional sport you see on TV, like NBA. If you go to play basketball down at the local park, it's not like that. You're not dunking on fools. Like, but we have this kind of uh outlook as like an audience that without the insight to just think that that is what that thing is. And so it's very easy for people to kind of just assume that we're adrenaline junkies jumping off rooftops, and because that's all the viral videos you see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, like that's something I always try to quite heavily kind of um like send home to everyone is that actually most people, especially the people who get really good, are not adrenaline junkies because if you're an adrenaline
Mm.
junkie, you're in essence making decisions in a kind of
Based on that
based
sensation.
on like
Yeah.
a yeah, it's almost like being on drugs, adrenaline is. Like
Hmm.
you're not making logical decisions actually based on what you can do. I quite often get people asking this question who come to the gym and they're like, "Oh, don't you guys, use knee pads or helmets or like?" And I'm like, "No, because
Classic.
we're not an adrenaline sport. Like those
Yeah.
sports are adrenaline sports where you have an aspect that you're not in control of.
You need that
That's why
protection.
yeah, like your bike can break or your skateboard breaks or
Hmm.
your parachute doesn't come out when you pull it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's why
There's
you need
it's
that.
need them. Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't have control. But in parkour, if you land on your face, that's because you jumped to your face.
Yeah, that's
Like,
that was within your control, and you oofed it essentially. Yeah.
yeah, like you did it. There is, unless like the rare occasions where wall breaks or railing breaks, like, but that doesn't happen often.
No, I mean usually as well as a practitioner, you've checked your surfaces, you've done your due diligence regarding that, and most of the time, unless you said like an accident or something like really mishap happens, then it's not common for that sort of thing to happen. It's yeah, like I was trying to explain to my physio yesterday. He was asking like when someone's like out there training with you, do you very much like egg them on to do the jump? Like is it like a big, or is it like they'll spot it themselves and then work on it? And it's like there is an aspect of encouragement, but it's never egging the other person on off the edge of something or like even up to reach something. It's like saying you've got it and reinforcing externally their own individual decision and empowered choice. And like that's really a fine balance that I think just comes with time training, and people don't really like it, from the outside looking in, it could very much just look like people yelling at each other to do shit like, oh, do it now, jump over there. But it's
Yeah.
much deeper than that, much more personal, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, and it's so much about knowing the people you train with. Like, I would never, like, I find myself if don't know somebody and I'm out there training with them, then I like automatically go towards like if they're stood there and unsure about something and they're scared or something, I automatically go towards being like, well, cool, maybe come back another day, mate. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
because I'm not going to tell that person they can do it because I don't know.
yeah,
Like,
I hate being that person and being like, look, man, I actually just don't think this is a wise decision right now with like the way that you're looking at it, or like with your, maybe you've got like a small injury or something and you still look like it's so hard to be that friend and be like, hey man, you probably shouldn't do the job because you want to see them achieving, you want to see them do great things. But yeah, at certain points you kind of do have to weigh your thumb on the scale and be like, actually, I think for safety
yeah,
reasons, like, come on.
exactly.
Yeah, I
Or
find
just like, have you just considered coming back tomorrow? If you're not
yeah.
feeling it right now, like if you feel like you need heavy metal music and you need to scream at yourself to do this, like come back another day in a better state of mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also a good way to like, if anyone who does get to that stage and gets frustrated with the fact that they haven't tried the jump after 30 minutes and they're just like, I've invested all this time. That's exactly right. You've invested all of this time now into figuring out, into breaking it down, into doing the mental hurdles that come. So see it as the work process that goes into the next time you achieve it, as opposed to like a bump in the road or a stop sign that you've now been forced upon. It's just, that's time vested in the process. So take it as that. And then the next time you come back, it'll be like you've done half an hour more work on the thing.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Is
and
there?
like visualizing and everything as well. People just need
Yeah.
to like realize that they can stand there and look at a jump, and that's half of the process of doing it.
Hmm.
Like so much. I actually had this crazy experience this year, which blew my mind because I'm an old school athlete. I suck at flips, 100%. Right?
Not the
I can
specialty.
barely I can barely do a standing full flat. Like um, you know,
I can't still, so you're still a leg up.
yeah, cool. We're on a similar level, I
Yeah.
think. I've seen your corks. They look pretty similar to
The
mine.
basics, like the raw basics, like 2007 to 2010, if you could do like a single full, a single cork, a gainer, a backflip, a side flip, maybe like some wall spin or something, you were good. You were good. Like a cast back,
Yeah,
if you could do a cast back before 2011, you were excellent.
mate, you were a god.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Such a
so I
different,
had this
so
yeah,
different
mate.
now.
And I had this experience this year where I kid you not, right? I had never successfully been able to do back dub pulls ever
Never clicked.
comfortably.
Yeah.
And this summer, right, while we were in the middle of like the week of doing a like parkour camp with kids, I kid you not, I had a dream all night long where I was doing back dub pulls.
I've had this
And
reoccurring dream.
yeah, and I woke up
You
the
could
next
feel
day.
it, right? You could feel it happening.
I knew I could.
You
I knew I
were
could.
George McGowan.
Yeah. And we went to a trampoline park that day. And I like one banged a dub full so easy and then did trip falls.
Yeah,
Like did
because
trip falls same day,
just
like
clicked.
having never been able to do it before.
That's
It
so
was
cool.
crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting how the body kind of does that, where it'll spend years not figuring something out, and then one thing will just click. Maybe it's timing, maybe it's positioning, maybe like it can be completely subconscious as well. But it's nice when it all comes together and you can have like a boost of progression or learning. Such a nice feeling.
Hmm.
Is there anything else that you'd like to touch base on before we get out of here for today?
Um, yeah, I don't know really.
Oh,
I guess
we should talk about OMFG coming up this year because it will be a
that's what I
couple
was
of
gonna
months
say.
after
Yeah.
this. I'm definitely coming. I'm excited for it. Yeah, big list of athletes. You guys are planning this ahead of time. What makes this different from OMG?
So, OMGs have just been the classic jam weekend event. It's, you arrive on Friday evening, you train a bit, you meet some people, you train a bit on Saturday, maybe there's a competition, and you leave on Sunday, right? That's
Hmm.
OMG. And
Yeah.
it's fun. Everyone has a nice time. But we personally feel that it's also got a bit too easy running those events. We want something a bit
Hmm.
more spicy for ourselves.
Yeah, a bit of a
Um,
challenge.
yeah. But B, we also think that there are hundreds and if not thousands of those kind of events all over the world.
Yeah,
And they offer the same thing, slightly different format, slightly different people, different gyms, whatever.
yeah.
But like
But
it's just the same experience. Meet friends, train.
yeah,
Um, and there is a lot more aspects to our community than that.
for sure.
So like our focus is to try and bring all aspects of the sport together. We want to
Hmm.
have more focus on like talking about film work. We want to have focus on coaching. We want to have focus on what it's like to be an athlete performing in our sport at a professional level. We want there to
Hmm.
be competition still and time to train still, but there's also going to be potentially movie premieres. There's going to be different discussion groups, talks about equality in our sport with
Hmm.
minority groups. We want to
Really
really
just
try and bring,
broadening like all of the
yeah,
different kind of topics that we talk about as a community and a culture and trying to amplify them and bring them into one space.
exactly, and really make people like think a bit more about, okay, this is more than just me showing up and doing a fat Kong pre with my mates. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot more to this. And also, we want to give people a completely different experience. We want it to be a festival, so we have live music every evening,
Woo.
um, which is for me super big hype.
Yeah.
Um, it's going to be, I think, a really crazy experience. We've got
Is
a
it going to be
massive
an
area.
outdoor area or indoor area, or do you know what
Music
the?
is going to be indoors.
Hmm.
We have a venue where we held the event earlier this year, the parkour only one that you were at.
Yep.
We've got that indoor gym,
Hmm.
the same one. Next to that, there's a bar which can host up to 300 people, roughly.
Okay.
So that's going to be where the main music events are happening. They've got a stage there and everything.
Sweet, sweet,
But then
sweet.
we're also going to have a massive outdoor setup built.
Hmm.
We've also got the indoor skate park again. We've got an
Yeah.
outdoor skate park as well,
Oh
because
wow.
we're
Yeah,
also
yeah.
having a group called Random Bastards from Sweden who are going to be running like skating events there.
Oh, cool.
Um,
So it's a multi-sport event as well. In that way, there'll be like a collaboration of action sports.
exactly. We're also going to have death diving. One of my
Yo.
things I'm looking forward to the most is we're going to have like an amateur death diving competition.
Oh, cool.
Um, from 5 meters, so nothing too dangerous. But
Yep.
like the idea being is that we'll hopefully have some guys who will do like a beginner intro course just to explain what it is, teach the
Yeah.
technique. So kind of,
I
I
did
think
one
I'll
from
treat
five
that as a
meters
qualifier.
recently.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I
sick.
learned in LA recently. It's an interesting technique, man. It's a little intimidating going in head first, but once you get it, it's really fun.
Yeah, it's so much
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
And
And
I
seeing
think
the
having a whole bunch of
crazy
like free
ones.
runners just chucking
Learn that.
himself off the top of that,
Yeah.
it should be so much fun.
Yeah, to be visually exciting and also a bit of I think like a safe good time send where a few people will be like trying to push that void a bit because like some of the stuff the like big like the big air stuff and the tricks that people are doing into these death dives is insane.
Yeah, 100%. And like some of the slams these guys take, like I don't know if you've watched any of the footage because in Norway they have like a really big comp of death diving every year. Because as
Oh
far as
no, I
I'm
haven't
aware, death
seen.
diving comes from Norway.
Ah, no, I haven't
Um,
seen.
yeah, it's called Dudsing. Yeah,
Dodds? Dodd?
Dudsing, and they
Dodsing?
have like the like big competition every year off 10 meters. People sending crazy stuff, like absolutely crazy
Jeez.
stuff. It's so fun to watch. But
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's just going to be a far more like all-round event with that festival feel. A lot of outdoor space, a lot of indoor space, different locations for accommodation. So there's going to be a camping site available. There's going to be indoor gym space. There's also we've even got some like kind of elite VIP tickets for people who want that experience where they get to stay in the
Mm-hmm.
hotel
Oh yeah,
included in their
nice.
ticket. Um, yeah, so it's like a really just a much bigger range, hoping to kind of really build a festival feel. That's what we want.
Yeah.
We want
So
that festival experience where there should almost be too much to do. Like you shouldn't be able to do everything because you should have to be like, I want to do that, and that sounds sick, and that sounds sick,
yeah,
and you
it's
want to come
yeah,
back next year to do the other things.
of course, of course. Is that going to still be a 3 day like weekend event, or will that be like a broader 4 or 5 day event? What's the plan there?
So it's gonna be, well, as I said, like a 3 day weekend event is inherently a 1 day event with an evening and a morning.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing instead a full 3 day event, which will be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all day, but all days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People who are coming from like coming internationally, I assume most will arrive on the Wednesday evening
Yep.
and leave Sunday morning. That's the
Giving
idea.
them their
So it's
full
kind of like a
spectrum.
5 day event,
But yeah, like
but
from
with like,
like an
yeah,
arrival day, like with your 2 travel days, it's a 3 day event in the middle, so that's five total. Makes sense. As
yeah,
opposed to having a 3 day event, which is 1 day in the center and two travel
yeah,
days. Yeah, cool.
exactly.
That's very exciting. And yeah, you guys have got tickets going on sale January 1st, so they'll be available now, maybe already sold out. So make sure if you haven't got them already, you go across to oslomovement.com, OMG.com. What's the
OsloMovement.no.
.no, Norway. Well, yeah,
Indeed.
I'm very much looking forward to coming to this event and seeing you there again and being in Norway for the summer. It's always a very, very beautiful place to be. And thank you so much for coming on and giving us insight into how you've created these events and bought yourself like a universe based in the thing you love. It's really cool and really inspirational to hear. This is our 11th episode. Next episode will be our final episode. We're going to have Noah Diogana coming on, talking about her experience as a professional athlete at such a young age and all the things she's done to make that happen. Yeah, I will see you all there next week. Ansel, thank you very much again for coming on. Ciao, 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 ciao.